and off of these virtual envelopes, more technically known as packets, inside of which are messages for the recipient. So what is the recipient going to do? Well, for this, we can actually use a different tool. So I'm still inside of my appliance here, and I've just loaded up Firefox, which you've probably used at some point this term. But what we've done in the appliance is we've actually pre-installed a few helpful tools that don't come with Firefox by default, but they are freely available for your Mac, PC, and the appliance. So if I go to my Tools menu, notice that we have a few things here. One is called Live HTTP Headers, and then soon we'll be playing with things in here, Web Developer like Firebug and these other tools here. But I'm going to go ahead and pull up Live HTTP Headers. Notice it just gives me this big blank window. And what this thing is going to do is it's going to sniff the traffic between my browser and, say, google.com. And it's going to show me what's inside of these packets that we've been talking about as virtual envelopes. So we can actually see what humans are taking for granted. Now, what's going on here, it looks like Firefox is designed to do auto updates or whatnot. So it's already talking, apparently, to Google, of all places. So you can also see with this what your browser's doing when you are not even on the keyboard. But I'll clear that, because it's a distraction for this. And I'm just going to go here to, and let me shrink my window a little bit so we can see both at once. I'm going to go to http://www.google.com/enter. And sure enough, on the right-hand side, I see all of the secret messages that were inside of this envelope. And I kind of lied to you earlier in that it's not as simple as just saying get/http 1.0, but it's pretty close. So what we see here at the top of this Live HTTP Headers window is, one, the URL that I just visited. So that's not interesting. But what is inside of the envelope that I just sent? It's everything here that I've highlighted in blue. So the very first message is as promised. It's a slightly newer version of HTTP, but that's a message from browser to server. Hey, I would like to shake hands with you, so to speak, using this protocol called HTTP. What else is in there? Well, apparently the next line, host : is a reminder to the server, I asked for google.com, www.google.com. Now, just as a quick check, why might it be necessary for the browser to explicitly remind the server what its own name is? How is this envelope addressed? What's on the outside of the envelope, rather? So the router address, or somewhere on there too, the IP address of google.com. So because we're using the internet and this protocol called IP, we're actually routing information from point A to point B using IP addresses. So this notion of www.google.com and these very human-friendly words is something we need to actually typically remind the server of, just in case, as we'll see, there's actually multiple web servers listening, multiple websites listening at this particular IP address. In the case of Google, not likely, but in the case of Final Project Season and using commercial web hosts, if you actually host a project externally, this will absolutely be the case, that multiple domain names share the same IP address. Now, what's the rest of this? Well, some of this is uninteresting, but this one's a little juicy. Turns out every time you visit a website on the internet, you're telling them a little something about yourself, even if you haven't logged in. You're telling them that, in this case, I'm running Linux. I'm telling them that I'm running Firefox. I'm telling them that I'm running version 7.01 of Firefox. And also, it seems that I'm also have a cookie. We talked briefly about these in previous weeks, and we'll come back to them more technically this week and next. But I'm essentially showing a hand stamp to the website that says, I've been here before, because you stamped my hand by storing this thing called a cookie on my hard drive. And by agreement of HTTP, because we speak this protocol, I'm always going to show you that cookie every time I revisit you, because I've been to Google before. So let's just scroll down as to what the server replies with. When I pull up google.com, the server is going to respond with a very similar message, but with a number, in this case, 200, which means OK. Now, if you've ever seen in a browser the number 404, 401, 500, 403, any of these ring a bell? 404 in particular? What does 404 generally represent? File not found. Like you made a typo or the web server made a mistake. So where are those numbers coming from? Why so technical? They're just inside of the server's response. So when my browser opens the envelope that was sent from Google to me, inside of there is a message among which is this code that says either 200, which means everything's OK, or 404, page not found, and a whole bunch of others. And then there's a whole bunch of other things here which we'll wave our hands at. But these two relate to cookies and some other features of the website. So at the end of the day, what we end up seeing is, of course, this. But what's been going on underneath the hood is the entirety of that story. The internet's actually getting data from point A to point B. But because browsers and web servers speak this other protocol, HTTP, and to be clear, that protocol just says, if you want data from me, you must send a message that looks like this. And I agree in turn to send you a message that looks like this. But thankfully, Microsoft and Mozilla and Google, they simplify these very technical details and just show us what we care about, which is typically a page that looks a little something like this. So that's in a little more detail how the internet works and how the web works. Any questions?